Alrighty, hello everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have our next workshop presenter ready to go for y'all. Eric, who is a developer at Defang, is going to be presenting to you all an introduction to Defang, the fastest way to develop, deploy, and debug your cloud application. I'm super excited for this one, so without further ado, I will hand it on over to Eric. Hello.
Hi, thanks, Mary. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Hope everyone is having a great Friday. Um, I'm in the West Coast right now, so it's a kind of a gloomy day, but it's still nice out. Yeah, so this is Defang's, I believe, fourth edition of this workshop, and we'll be covering a few things. Hi, Neil. Hi, everyone. I just want to go over it a little bit, I guess. Who am I? I am a developer at Defang. We are a company that creates a web tool that's going to, I believe, help a lot of people get online and be able to not worry so much about how they are deploying. Yes. So with that, let's go maybe on the first slide. Present. Oops. Sorry a second. Let's just go to the first slide. Share screen. And there we go. So, what do you guys need to know for this? Actually, this is a kind of intro to everything, so I wouldn't worry too much about not having experience in the cloud, not having experience with command lines or things. We're going to go over this stuff. So what you are going to need first is a computer. It used to say on the slide a laptop, but any computer, Mac OS, Linux, Windows. You are also going to need a editor. So even if you use text editor of some sort, or I believe VS Code is probably one of the more popular ones at this point. And that's what we generally use in-house here. There's the Docker desktop. This is optional, but we recommend having this as a part of your development cycle. I'll explain why later. And then you need the Defang command line tool for your OS. So with that, there is a installer for it. So let me switch over to the other screen, and I will show you where to find the installer. So first thing you probably want to do is go to defang.io. So this is our main page. You'll be able to find all the information here, and as you kind of notice that we're kind of celebrating V1. What does V1 mean? It means we have produced a production-ready command line tool. Prior to this, we were still building, still in beta. So with this launch, we have achieved a level of production level code that we feel comfortable introducing to the world. Maybe the first thing we're gonna do is do a install of the CLI. So the easiest way to do it is to scroll down to the part where it says install, right? And as you can see from here, there's various options depending on your shell, Linux, brew if you want to for Linux and OS X, Windows use winget, Nix if you like, or you can go directly to getting the binaries itself. I would recommend probably using one of the installers if you haven't done before. Whatever works for you, and we'll actually install that. So I would say go ahead and do that. This last line here, Defang generate, is not actually necessary at this point. We're gonna get to that later on in this workshop. But it is a good tool in terms of helping you get started on your projects. So let me paste this down into the chat, or Mary will do this. And that's another link to the install page. So, oops. So this has just installed without the Defang generated in it. Okay, so check that out on your website. I would recommend trying to download this, install this while we're doing this presentation. And then the other thing, we're going back to the slides for a second. And so what are we going to cover? We're going to cover what is Defang. We kind of went over this a little bit. One-click deploy, code generation, Docker files and compose files. So if you don't know anything about this, about Dockerization, containerization, it'd be a good intro to it. It's not as complicated as maybe you've heard otherwise, but it's a fairly common concept at this point in terms of building your application in sort of a container, a virtualized machine, basically, that you can actually deploy everywhere. And then we'll go over a little bit of deploying with Defang and then the AI debugger. So let's do one-click deploy. It will, that again. It's pretty cool tool. Let me see what the screen is again. So there it is. Okay, so let's go hit this thing called Portal. Okay, so one thing you do need is a GitHub account. That's how we authorize you. If you don't have a GitHub account, you can sign up for one. It's free. As a matter of fact, if you go to this page, I'll ask you to log in using your GitHub account or register one if you don't have one. And if you don't know what GitHub is, it's basically a repository that you can actually save your source code to, do revision control, essentially use Git, which is a command line revision control tool to save your changes, have a history of changes, merge different branches together, helps collaboratively work together. So it's also a very common industry tool, so highly recommend you get familiar with that. There's actually not a lot of stuff in Git that you need to know. And to be honest, probably a lot of people just run through 4 or 5 commands. And if anything else more complex happens, it's a quick Google. Somebody's worked out these issues before. So highly recommend get involved in using Git. It's a pretty common industry tool at this point. It has been for a while. So let's go back to the homepage that we have here. So one of the things that we have are samples. It's basically not quite boilerplate. It's similar. It's a very minimal application, basically, a really minimal program that's really there to help you start your app, right? So the worst thing can happen is like you have an idea maybe, but then you're looking at your screen, it's just a blank screen, right? What do you do? You have to write your own boilerplate code and all that sort of stuff. So this is kind of to get you over that hurdle of just that paralysis initially. So I'm gonna do a fairly simple sample that we have here. So we have a ton of samples here of different languages, C#, as you can see from here. We have Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, really, a few other things. So we can do a simple one. It's just going to be Next.js, and we have a few samples of this. So I'm just going to click on Next.js, and what you see here, let me shrink this up just a little bit. What you see here is basically, what do you want to do? What are we going to do is deploy it to Playground. Playground is Defang's kind of proving grounds for your apps and stuff like that. It's not a production system that you deploy to and stays up forever. If you don't make any changes to your project over 7 days, we'll down it. It's basically for you to try out different things, make a pretty quick deploy of your application, play around with it, test out stuff, basically. So getting back to this, what we're going to do is we're going to deploy this Next.js project to Playground. So we're just going to go here, hit deploy Playground, and this actually brings you to GitHub. So what it's going to do is going to clone this project to your GitHub. So you want to give it some sort of name, equal name. I'm just going to call it demo Next.js. Oh, we have that one. Okay, how about Defang Next.js? Oh, wow. Okay, DFG. Okay. Don't have to worry about anything else with here. Just accept it. So I'll press create repository. So this will copy stuff into your repository. This is your source code holding a space storage, right? So now that it's here, what is it doing? So one thing it's doing is it's already deploying, actually. So there's something called GitHub Actions. So what that is when you can trigger certain events in GitHub. Just so you can do it programmatically. There is a file for looking at that. So I'll just show you the file really quickly. So it's in this directory. It's called deploy YAML. YAML is, if you've heard JSON, YAML's kind of similar. It's a way to structure your configuration, but using spaces rather than brackets. So this is all the stuff here is definitions for how GitHub will actually do some certain actions given what actions we do. In this case, on a push to the main branch. So so if you actually commit anything into this branch, into the main part of this branch, it will actually trigger off these GitHub actions. So if you want to have a look at what's going on here, you can actually see that there's just a nice little graphic here showing that it's currently deploying to Playground. And then we can look a little closer. And in the logs here, we have this this link. And this goes back to Portal. So you can actually monitor the deployment of this in Portal, right? So this is kind of our proving grounds and sort of our access to a lot of things that are specific to you. So you will only see one project here at a time because we are only limiting Playground to one project. That doesn't mean that you can't have other projects though, because you can also take down your current project and deploy another project afterwards, basically. So you can try out different things. We have a bunch of logs, basically. So what generally happens is we will build your application, containerize it, and then we deploy it. I should say your application will be containerized because it has a Docker file and all that sort of stuff. That if you don't know what that is, we'll get to that in a second. So we also have this link here. Right now it's yellow, so this link is probably not going to work. Yeah, so it's not quite ready at this point. So we just have to be a little patient. Cloud deployments usually take a bit of time because there is quite a bit of underlying infrastructure and resources that have to be provisioned before your services are actually going to be available. So at this point, we're building images and we are deploying. So it might be ready before it goes green. So this is what we've actually deployed, right? Not too interesting, but it's a good jumping off point. Another thing you can actually do is go back to your code. Oops. Go back to your code. You can actually make a change to your code. An app in here, and I believe it was the layout TSS. So, oops, actually it was the other page, other link. So it's page CSS. So this is what we saw on screen, Next.js times Defang. Next.js times Defang. So what we can actually do is edit this directly. Just go say, hello, MLH. And then I'm going to commit this change. I'm not going to leave a comment. But, so I've committed this change into main. So what's happened now? So as you mentioned before, this actually is triggering another event. Okay, so this will actually update the current deployments. So we're going back here. The light is red, meaning that it's in current process of building and deploying. So if we look at the build logs, it will eventually get there. You won't see an update to this immediately because it has to build, and the service will stay up until the point where it has to go down and be replaced with another service. So we just have to be a little bit patient. There we go. So right now we are building a bunch of stuff, right? And it does take a bit of time, like I said. And we haven't got to deployment at this point. So any questions at this point? Hopefully all of this is makes sense. So Defang help us to deploy Docker files in short. We help deploy compose files, which have host services built from other Docker files. So Docker file essentially is, we'll get to this in a bit, but sort of a definition of what your application, how to build your application. And then we'll take that, actually a compose file will actually can actually reference your application's Docker files. Basically build your container for it to deploy. So the idea of a compose file is almost like you have your app files, you have your little smaller apps in Docker files and stuff that cohesively together they might make some sort of deployable production application, right? It's composed of a whole bunch of these other services that are defined by doc files or images and stuff like that. So the compose file itself is what is used to sort of send it up to the cloud, defines how things talk to each other. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see if this is actually ready. May not be. Not quite. And it usually takes a few minutes to actually do this. So we just have to wait patiently, or wait impatiently, as it were. So the service is going down. This is what was there before. And it's still not up yet. So it takes a bit of time. Let's just see. Okay, next start. Okay, now it should be ready. Now it should be ready. Okay. Apparently it's going to take it just a little bit longer than we hope. Okay, here we go. So now we've deployed, we made the changes as hello MLH. At no point have we actually, besides just the editor here to change the text, right? At no point do we have to even open a code editor. It was just we didn't even have to touch the command line at all. So it's pretty simple in this case, right? You have something in your repo now. You can pull it down, work on it locally, and you can actually GitHub and use sort of Git to sort of push it back up, merge into your main. It will kick off an update. So with that though, let's get into the other part here, code generation. So I'm going to show you kind of something that's pretty cool. I'm going to switch over to my other screen, my editor. And hopefully this is big enough. You guys can see this? You all can see this? Hopefully. Okay, so if you have Defang installed, it's actually a command line, right? So this gives you a whole bunch of options here of what you can do. Right now, I think the thing I want to demonstrate is code generation to help you get started with this stuff. So Defang on your command line, on your terminal. If you're not very familiar with command line interpreter, basically it's just it's basically a little program basically you can give your operating system commands, run different things. I know, for instance, that a lot of people actually run this inside of VS Code, so I will show you what that is like in a second. So we go defang generate, and so this will give you a bunch of options. So all these are examples or the same sort of samples that we had before. So like Next.js. We actually have a LLM in there also. Somebody said, so it's like yourself where instead of deploying on the front apps, you deploy the containerized apps. Yes. So we are language agnostic, even though we only have a few languages. Well, we have some languages here. As long as you can containerize it, right? It is something that we can deploy. I think in vast majority of cases, there shouldn't be an issue with it. So yeah, so as long as we containerize it, we should be able to deploy it. With what I want to show you is something called AI generate. So we choose AI generate, choose a language. I'm going to go Node.js, JavaScript, and then so you describe your app. Okay, so it's kind of a prompt, and it will generate for you the skeleton of the code. Somebody said that the installation link is broken in Portal. Yes, actually, I fixed that yesterday, but it hasn't been merged yet. So go to the Defang IO page or the other link I provided earlier and install that way. For now, it should be fixed later today. So for this, I'm going to say create for me a random meme website. No API keys. So sometimes API keys are required basically to access certain APIs online, basically to confirm that you're allowed to use it. You are who you are. In this case, we're just going to ask for none of that. So it should be free. I'm going to say rand meme. Okay, so what's happening at this point? So the AI is taking the prompt for creating a random meme website, and it is trying to put together a skeleton. Okay, so it's done it. Let me share with you this other screen. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. So what you didn't see, because I wasn't sharing my entire screen, was that once it came to the command line was finished, it actually popped this open for me. So this is VS Code, and it generated for me the code itself, right? Package JSON because it's JavaScript. The code itself, the Docker file, and the compose file. Because all the stuff is generated by AI, you still have to sort of have a look at it to make sure that everything is kosher. So I would definitely recommend that you go through this, have a look at it quickly, and just make sure everything is cool. So this one is referencing 5 different JPEGs, and it looks like it's going to randomly go through this list and show you what it is. There's been other different prompts have been used before, which will actually make API calls every time, so it won't actually just be 5 images of well, it won't just be a list of 5 images. It would be after API calls that will be up to wherever API provider is going to give back some random images, right? So maybe it's a good time for here to just go over what was generated for Docker. So Docker kind of describes for you, the Docker part describes for you basically how your program is going to be made into an image. So an image essentially is a package of all the stuff you need for your application to run in somewhere in the container. So it's if you read from top to bottom, it's very logical. So if you had a fresh computer, nothing on it, right? What's the first thing you kind of need? You kind of need a foundation, right? Kind of the OS, right? If you haven't installed OS before, it's the first thing you need for a new computer. If so, you honestly, you probably just have OS is probably installed with the computer you got, but sometimes in old times you would have to do the installs yourselves, or if you want to change OSs, you would have to do installs yourself. So in this case, what we have here is a Node 20 Slim, and that's kind of an image from Node themselves, Node.js themselves. We defined a working app. So this is where our code is going to exist inside of this package, right? So essentially what's happening is you have a little small Linux machine defined and have all that sort of file structure exists. And you define where you want your code to exist. So it then runs this apt-get. So apt-get is another package manager for Linux. Basically, is asking to install all this stuff here, right? There's a list, gets updates, gets installs, a bunch of stuff. And because this is a JavaScript program, it's going to copy the package JSON, our local package JSON, to the destination, which is going to be default to the work directory app. And then what do? You run npm install, right? If you're doing this manually, this is what you'd be doing, right? You install all the packages that your dependencies, your program needs as dependencies. And then you copy your code. This is kind of a weird sort of syntax, dot to dot. So from your local to your destination, basically. And we say that, okay, we are going to expose port 3000. So what's a port? I kind of make it analogous to, say, if you live in an apartment building, it's like a mailbox, right? So your IP address will say map to a building, let's say. And but once you get there, you have a whole bunch of apartments, right? So I kind of make it analogous to saying, like, you're going to this apartment and that person is expecting to hear from this letter or something like that. So you're exposing that for everyone actually to see. Excuse me. And then entry point. So if you have a program, you have to tell it where to start, right? If you have a whole bunch of stuff that's been like copied over into this package, you have to tell it where you're going to start. So this entry point says I'm going to run node with the parameter main.js. So you're going to run main.js under node application, and that's what's going to happen. So you're going to run that whenever you actually run into a container. So the other part here is compose YAML, and this is kind of what at the level that Defang is kind of looking at most of the time. So what you have is your list of services. So this is where, if you're like, I might have like microservices, right? You have like small things that say has a website. You might have another definition for something, something like a database, right? And it's gonna say MongoDB. So here we're defining an image that already exists, right? Here we're defining that we're going to build from a Docker file, right? And when you have a whole bunch of services together, right, you want to provide the compose file is a way of sort of binding them together, how to communicate with each other and stuff, right? So one service may not be that interesting in terms of what it does, but when you have enough services together, that they provide a full featured application that you can send out to work using. I'm just gonna not do anything other than that. So now that we have this, what do we do with it? I'm going to open a command line here because terminal, because a lot of people actually use this in here. So down here, basically the same thing as the other terminal we have. We're going to go. So this is we're actually in the same directory as main here. So we have the compose file here. So we're going to go is defang compose up. And I'm going to do something, I'm going to send this actually to, instead of Playground, I'm going to send this actually to AWS. So, and just hit enter. I have an AWS account. So basically what happens is if you have your own AWS account, we can deploy to that account. So you don't want to be on Playground all the time. Playground is, like I said, kind of a proving ground testing area. But if you have a more permanent home for this stuff, right, your account, this is going to deploy to that. It does take a little bit longer because for AWS, it creates something like 70 objects of some sort just to make sure everything is going to work properly, right? So there's actually a lot of provisioning that needs to happen before you can actually have a running application. So in this case, it's going to take a little bit of time. You can also go verbose mode. There is no monitoring of this, unfortunately, in terms of Portal, but you can see the logs. Right now, it's deploying. It's building and then it's going to deploy. Right? We always build first and then deploy. So somebody's asking which is better for tools, Go or Rust? Good question. I haven't used Rust, and I've just been using Go. Go is pretty verbose in terms of pretty wordy in terms of writing stuff. I haven't used Rust, so I can't really say. To my understanding, Rust is quite different and there's a lot better in terms of memory safety and stuff like that. I don't think there's an issue with Go in terms of memory safety. So I'm not sure I can really answer it. I'm gonna say Go because I've been using it, but if I end up using Rust soon, I may change my mind. If anybody else wants to sort of jump in that, be interested to see what your comments are in that also. If we want to look at here, as you see, we're creating a whole bunch of stuff in the background here, right? So load balancers, maybe some stuff a little bit overkill in terms of this application itself, but you can just imagine that if you have a really popular app that's going to take like thousands and thousands of requests every minute, right? You can easily overload one server. So having a load balancer makes perfect sense. And this is perfect for deploying your great idea that the world's going to try, right? So at this point, you also notice that we have not actually gone to AWS to do anything, right? Everything's just command line. We built this from Defang generate. We kind of explored the code a little bit. We went Defang compose up and pointed to the AWS provider, and it's pushing that into my account. You'll see at the end here, there's going to be a link to what we built, and then we can, once it's finished building and deploying, right? So there is a pretty good deployment time here, right? So one of the things that we recommend, I mentioned earlier, was that you have a Docker desktop, right? And it's basically, the idea here is that since deployment takes so long, your iteration steps in terms of like building something, testing it, deploying it, seeing how it works once it's deployed. If it's like 7 minutes or something like that, right, it's pretty lengthy, right, before you get feedback in terms of like, did it do everything? And I don't know about you guys, but generally when I write stuff, there's probably something wrong with it, and I need several iterations to actually sort that out, right? So, I mean, there's definitely techniques for sort of helping you in that, like test-driven development, just bring things smaller, testing things as you go. But in the end, you're going to have to deploy at some point. And using Docker will deploy stuff locally first. So maybe one thing we'll do after this is run this in Docker just to show you that you can actually have this run locally. Oh, I should mention one thing on the compose file here. You have this thing called health check. So what happens is when you deploy your app, it may take some time before it actually is ready for other things to connect to it. Like maybe it has to initialize some data, maybe it has to grab some information from here, do some processing of it before it's ready for our access. Right. So what that health check does in this case is basically it's a smaller script that it will check against this this address. So this localhost is local to the service. That means that when you run your service, your Docker file is running in its own kind of computer, its own literal virtual computer. And so you're running a smaller program in that computer. So localhost just means to itself at port 30. So sorry, port 3000. So when it is stable, like it's ready to accept things, it gives you back a result, then it kind of goes into a stable state. So similarly in Portal, we had when deployed, it went from red to yellow and then to green eventually. Okay? So during that point, if you remember, I went into Portal and tried to hit the link to get to the actual application, and it actually allowed us to load the application before Portal had recognized it was green. And that's because the health checks wants to make sure that it's stable first, right? So it wasn't quite stable. We went to this to our app and it showed us stuff, and then eventually went green. But you can actually get there before that. Okay. What AWS services are you using? We're deploying to Fargate, and yeah, that's what we have for. That's the opinionated part of this. That we provide the infrastructure we think is most general for everyone to use, basically. And so you in due course you don't have to touch AWS at this point. You can, because once we deploy to your AWS account or wherever your account, we get out of the way, right? We just do that deployment for you. Once it's there, you can do anything else that you want to do. If you make changes on your application, you can use us to redeploy again, and it will basically push to AWS. I'll do a blue-green install. That means your service should not go down. Basically, your new service will go up first, and then it will take your other service down and redirect all communications to your new service. So you don't really see a difference. So let's go back to the terminal here. As you can see, we have a app URL. So I'm going to switch over to the web page window again. Portal, let's see. Okay, and then it's going to open this up and dump a copy of that in there. So yeah, so we've written no code. We've used Defang generate to create this, and should change every time I reload, right? So it's random, so it's probably, there's only 5 images, so it's going to go through this stuff. So in that respect, this is a good jumping off point for you to actually create your programs, right? Your applications, because like I said, staring at a blank screen kind of sucks, right? You can't, you want to get over that sort of initial impediment of like, what are you going to do, right? Or that paralysis. So once you have this, you can start creating other stuff. You can create other endpoints, right? For put, for post, for delete, right? You have your CRUD operations. You can create a database instance, right? So you can basically, it's a really good jumping off point for you to start working on your projects. Okay, one thing I do want to show also is that I am going to break this program. Okay, so right now this is deployed. So I want to show you our AI debugger. So I'm going to make this not, so I just took away this opening curly brace. And then I am going to do a defang compose up again. Okay, this might take a little bit of time, but essentially it's going to do the same thing. It's going to build and it's going to try to deploy. And the AI debugger is going to, you'll give it option of doing the using the AI debugger or not. If you allow it to, it will then look at the logs with your source code, and it will then try to figure out what is actually wrong. It will give you suggestions on how to fix the issue. So while it's doing that, I wonder if I can actually, I'm going to open another terminal. And I am going to do Docker compose up. So this is running Docker desktop, and I'm going to try to run this application of ours. Right. So right now, it's doing the same thing that Defang does, right? It's trying to build. It's actually I shouldn't have fixed. Actually, I shouldn't have broken this in the first place yet. A little too early on that, but whatever the case, it was trying to basically build, and it failed because I took that curly brace away. Right. So going back to Defang, it's doing the same thing. It's trying to build. It hasn't gotten to the point where it's detected an issue yet, because we are actually sending this stuff onto the cloud to actually get it built and then deployed. So from Docker, we can see that it recognizes there's an error. In here, we're not quite there yet, but I should be able to just quickly fix this for a second and just do a Docker deploy, or Docker. So I can just do a Docker update this and see if it actually is recognizing. Okay, it's not liking it so much. Let's just go back to Defang for now. Oh, we'll get back to this. And maybe we'll try to generate another application itself. Yeah, so if you kind of look at the logs here, we are seeing a bunch of essentially the Docker file, as you can kind of see here. we were talking about the work directory, running apt-get. It's basically taking all that stuff and it's trying to build that into an image, right? So as I said before, image is like a packaging of all the software you need to run your application, right? All your dependencies and all that sort of stuff. And then the container essentially is like the running of that application. Okay, so we detect that there's an error, right? So you want to debug with the AI debugger. I'm going to fix this again because it was in this state before. So I'm going to say yes. And should give us some answers in a second. Okay, so it gave us 3 issues that it's found. One with AWS policies. We can ignore that. There's a pull-through cache performance issue. Well, I'm not worried about that. And then there's a syntax in main.js, line 14. So I was thinking here, I had the curly brace here, but it's breaking because we put in a code here before we actually put in the curly brace, right? So it's kind of the error in there. And this actually recommends what you should do to update. So you notice that here is put in the bracket, right? So if we do this, once again, of course, it fixes the issue. And then what we can do is just sort of redeploy. Right? And then this is now fixed and it will get set up. And so I wonder if Docker will actually work at this one. No, I think it's yeah, can't bother fixing it. But the reason we have a Docker basically is to have the cycle rate. Like it went actually pretty fast in terms of like detecting that there's an error, right? So when you do your own applications, make your own applications, it helps to have really quick iterations cycle, right? Minutes kind of will get sucked up pretty quickly. So the quicker you have that, the faster you can actually fix your stuff, get your whatever task done. So it's highly recommended that you actually do take the time to set up your development environment and have that sort of be quick for you to fix things and sort of detect when things go wrong. And that's where kind of tests come in at the same time. Let's see if yeah, so I think that is most of it. Is there any questions that anyone would like to ask? Where do you check that has deployed? So well, sorry, did I forget to switch you back to the presentation? Apologies that I was talking while the wrong page was being shown. So for Playground, Portal is the way to check where it goes green. The other way to check is, let me just switch back over to, check that. Okay. Okay, so the other place you can check, you can go to, let's go to the app. So projects are kind of the way that we tracked deployments and stuff. So a different project name would be a different project altogether. So where was I going with that? It's just that it's nice to know. So one thing you can do with Defang tail, and so this kind of gives you a listing of basic logs that have gone by in the stream. So we're going to go to AWS and let's see if there's actually anything at this point. So let's try to stream what's active. The other thing you can do is actually, what is it? Since 1 hour, let's say, right? And then let's go AWS. And yeah, so this is the logs from about well, it's right now, but going back, there's a bunch of other logs here, right? So everything from now to since an hour ago, so will get shown. So this is a way to sort of like monitor what's going on, and at the end of it, if you do a deployment, the CLI will eventually finish, and will give you a URL for your application has been deployed to, right? So you can hit that link. It should be stable at that point. If anything goes wrong, though, I'll give an error. The AI debugger can be used to sort of figure out what's going on with that. You can make fixes to your application and then sort of try to redeploy, or just run it in Docker first and just figure out what's wrong and then try to redeploy. Let me just switch over to okay, so yeah, so in this case, server started on 3000. This is our random meme generator. Well, sorry, it's a random cycling of 5 images that the AI thought was what met the criteria for the prompt that we gave it. Yeah, so pretty simple. I'm going to see if we can actually create another. I'm going to create another app actually. Let's just see if we can get that quickly. This one. Let's just do this, and I will create another. So let's just defang generates. Generate AI. It's just that. Okay. Create a website which will show me a random dog picture. Show me random dog pictures every time I load the page. No API keys. Okay, and then so dogs. Okay, so it's right now it's generating the code, and it should pretty quickly pop up into. Okay, once again, you didn't see that pop up because I'm only sharing a screen at a time. But so you can see this, I hope. So we created dogs, right? There's the main.js. It's going to go to random dog. So I don't actually know if this actually is. We'll see, I guess. And so the thing we can do right away, I'm going to just assume everything's okay. Everything I think looks all right. I'm going to open a terminal, and I'm just going to go let's go Docker compose up and see if that actually works. So here we're building. Everything looks pretty groovy. And I am going to actually delete my project here. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over to the browser. Defang portal again. Okay. So I just ran like Docker. So I'm gonna grab the URL. Sorry, that's not the URL. So it's localhost because that's on Docker and was at port 3000 again. I took down my other app, which was also running on 3000 bits. So we have a basically a dog app, right? And once again, we don't really have any code, but it's good stepping off point. So question, you mentioned you're going to show how to deploy to AWS tomorrow. What session is that? So my colleague Raf, I believe, is going to be doing that session. He's probably going to go into domains and more into AWS deployment. Maybe just in general deployment to maybe DigitalOcean or something else. So it's a little bit more advanced topic that he's going to be covering. Yeah, so come by tomorrow. Oh, hey, Raf. Postgres, AWS, and domains. Yeah. Okay. So Raf is it's pretty far. He lives in Europe right now, so I was surprised that he's actually on. Yeah. So he'll be going over the stuff tomorrow in more detail. So save those questions that you have from tomorrow. It'd be a super interesting workshop. Any other questions? You're welcome. Raf, do you have an opinion on Go versus Rust? Yeah, maybe. This feels like the start of a religious war, so maybe we shouldn't actually give an opinion. But you know what? Use the language you love. You know, it's programming should be fun, should be engaging. So try everything. Yeah, thanks, Toki. Yeah, we do have a Discord also. If you have any issues at all, come ping us there. We'll try to help sort you out. We'll try to be as responsive as we can. But for sure, just hit us up. We're pretty friendly. We don't chew anybody out. We're all been where you guys have been in terms of like starting up and just trying to create great apps. And you know, we just want to hear from more people. And we would love to hear feedback in how we can actually make Defang work for you better. Because if you're having issues, I'm sure other people will, and we would love to solve that stuff for you guys, right? I mean, we built this tool so that developers can get their stuff out there quickly, not have to have this whole sort of knowledge base about cloud deployments and stuff like that. We want to take care of that for you guys. I mean, you guys can, of course, get into that in the future, but I don't think it should be a huge obstacle to do that, right? So yeah, hit us up. Let us know if there's anything you want, features that you like, things that you don't like, features that you think would be fantastic to help you, anybody else. Yeah. And thank you for attending this workshop.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Eric, and for everybody who joined here. I know we had a couple questions about catching the recording of this. It'll be live on our YouTube as soon as this ends. So if you want to go watch any parts of that again, you can go do that. But yeah, huge thank you, Eric, for presenting today. That was awesome. And I am looking forward to tomorrow's workshop. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.